not far from here, with his mom Helen, dad Jim, and sisters Pat, Karen, and Cheryl. Next door, he has surrogate parents, Mom and Pop Purdy. From the stories I've heard, he has a pretty good childhood, full of adventures, good friends, and a little bit of mischief. Dad was always into music, singing and playing guitar, a passion that he continued throughout his life. At 22, he fell for a blue-eyed girl named Donna. They married and had a love that movies are based on. Together they loved to travel, jet-setting to Tokyo, Hong Kong, and all over Europe. Their favorite spot by far was Hawaii. This year would be their 50th anniversary. During the earlier years, they owned and operated 2 English pubs in Vancouver, the first of the kind, the Horse and Carriage, and the King's Head Inn. After 8 years, they decided to sell and move back to trail. Dad rejoined the paving world. They also bought the Glenmurray Market, which kept Mom busy. He loved the physical aspects of the job and really enjoyed going to work every day. Eventually, he worked his way up and became the general manager of the Janelle operations for SPL. It is not often that you can say that someone honestly enjoyed going to work every day. He loved the challenges that the day would bring and the crew that he worked with. He even had a couple favorites. Mom and Dad enjoyed playing an active role in the lives of their nieces, Mary, Angie, and Chrissy, and eventually decided it was time to have a family of their own. So along came Devin and myself. Even though Dad worked out of town, we never felt left behind. He took the dad role with a devoted passion. Every night before bed, we would get a phone call, a call that always started with a Woody Woodpecker voice, Yogi Bear, or some other annoying character. Growing up, I enjoyed spending time with Dad, whether that be on top of a paver with an umbrella, singing and dancing, or washing the deck. Dad always made an effort to come home to see as many soccer games and tournaments as possible. He wanted us to feel special and loved. Dad loved working in the dirt with Devin. Together they converted the vegetable garden into a huge sandbox with paved roads and a pit where Devin could dump dirt and water. I don't know who had more fun. I know the last few years he really enjoyed working with Devin in a much larger sandbox. As we got older, Dad wanted to continue to make lasting memories, taking family trips to the Dominican, San Diego, Vegas, and Disneyland. The annual family trip to the Davenport will not be the same. He truly enjoyed this break in the middle of a busy season, beginning his happy hour at exactly 5 and ending the weekend with the famous brunch. There are so many memories, but not enough time to tell. Dad had his 2 loves, his family and his work with SPL. He was able to give 110 to each and still had time for himself. You can find him at the gym or playing at some musical game. But we can't forget about his 3rd love, his grass. That was one thing he did not care if we participated in. The satisfied look he got when he cut that fresh grass and with the lines, he was a little bit obsessed, having to beat the neighbors to get the grass going early. Dad was a devoted Christian. His commitment was evident. He drew his strength from God and the scriptures and never once questioned why. I think it is fair to say that my dad was one of a kind. He was a real life superhero. And these huge shoes to be filled. He was an amazing husband, father, uncle, brother, son, cousin, co-worker, and friend. He will truly be missed. But right now, he's probably paving a lot of gold roads up in heaven, so.
Thanks everybody for being here. This is diverting a little from the ceremony, but so many people didn't know he was sick. So we felt we would use this opportunity to just let you know the last couple years of his life. As you know, in 2004, he had kidney cancer. Had kidney removed and never looked back. He continued with his x-rays and checkups every 6 months, and everything was good for 8 years. In 2012, some new spots showed up on the lymph nodes beside his lungs. His oncologist in Kelowna was not concerned, but performed a biopsy. Surprise to all, Jim's cancer had returned. We got the news in December of 2012. It was a shock as he had been feeling so good. And so his journey began again. At the time, we were told that he had 12 to 16 months to live, stage 4 renal carcinoma. His oncologist in Kelowna gave him the opportunity to take a chemo drug, but Jim, after much thought, discussion with family, and of course prayer, chose not to take the chemo medication because there would be too many side effects and not much quality of life. Instead, he changed his diet and kept his exercising and started vitamin C drip therapy. Jim continued on through 2013 and 14, adhering to his diet and exercise and always giving God the glory. The will to live is a great starting point. Bad things do happen to good people, but hope sets your course, inspiring the will to live. In August of 2016, Jim had an incident where he picked up a tall propane tank. As he turned, he felt something pop in his lower back, and he began having physio and chiropractor appointments. He kept trying to work it out. He always thought he could work everything out. He was due for another CAT scan in October of 2015, and that is when they found the tumor on his T12 vertebrae. He started radiation right away in hopes it would slowly grow because he didn't want to become paralyzed. In September of 2016, Megan and Jim went to see a spinal surgeon in Vancouver who was surprised that he was still able to be mobile. And Jim would say, well, that's God in me, persevering. He said he could take a few months to decide on surgery. Over the next few months, the pain never relented, but you would never hear him complain. We spent Christmas 2016 in Kelowna with Megan BJ. It is then that a series of unfortunate events plagued Jim. He developed thrush and pneumonia and was hospitalized in Trail. Once released from the hospital, Meg came down to help Jim while I went to see my sister, who was also sick and unfortunately passed away. He had a reaction to the medication. He had lost a lot of weight, but he was still determined. It got to the point where he needed surgery as soon as possible. In February of this year, Jim had the surgery to remove the tumor and support his spine with rods. He recovered well and was determined to get back to the gym. He used his walking sticks every day and was so determined. Then March 27 hit. Jim's stomach began to bother him and he had a hard time eating. More tumors had formed. They had told him then that he had a blood clot at the entrance to his big artery that feeds into your heart, and that there was a tumor in the same area pressing on the blood clot. It was kind of a walking time bomb. So he went to Kelowna again for target radiation on the tumor that was pressing on the clot. He had a hard time recovering from this radiation as he was already weak and had lost so much weight, but he was determined. He went to work, which gave him purpose, and he even got out to the May Days and Trail and was able to see some friends. Then in June, they found a big tumor on his liver and again radiation in Kelowna. 2 days into treatment, and Jim got very sick with a blood infection and had to be admitted to the hospital there. He spent a week there and then was transferred to Trail and then was able to come home. It was tough for him to get to the office, but he gave it his best, and when he couldn't go to the office, he worked on his computer at home doing posts and answering emails and phone calls, and it made him feel so good. He celebrated his birthday and Father's Day at home with the kids and I. Later that week, he endured a series of events, trying to get a PICC line in to administer the antibiotics he was on, but the line kept hitting his tumor. Finally, they were able to get a midline put in and I could administer the antibiotics at home. It was on Friday, June 23rd, that Jim said to me, "I don't think I'm getting better." And we sat and had a long talk about life, our life. And my heart wanted to say to him, "Please don't go," but I couldn't. He had fought so hard. We talked about how blessed we were with our life and with each other, and we cried together, enjoying a sad but special time. He said, "I have fought this fight with my body and my spirit, and now I'm tired." On June 20th, he was taken by ambulance 26, he was taken by ambulance to the hospital. As he was 2 weeks, he could hardly breathe. Once on oxygen, he perked up quite a bit. He decided then that he would not come back home. He was moved to the family room, and we were with him 24/7. He was at peace with God, and we were able to have some very special moments with Jim. He took his last breath at 8:15, July 2nd. His battle is over, and he was at rest. And for those of you who wanted to come and see him, you have to appreciate that's not what he wanted. He chose the way he went. He didn't need to say goodbye to anybody because he was always kind and loving when he saw those people. He was too tired, and he's at rest.
Thank you, Tom, Megan. Peter McCoy is another longtime friend, musician. No, we're going to have Peter sing in a little while. But first, there's some very special people who, you know, in a room like this, there are many, many, many stories that could be told. But there are a few friends that have been especially invited by family to share their memories and pay their tribute. And I'd like to invite those of you who have been asked to come. And perhaps you could all just come up at once and be here and Bob will lead us off, and then the others can just follow along.
Family asked me to briefly outline some of the activities we had with Jim early in the 60s when we formed the band and played music together. In late 1962, which was, I guess I was probably 17, Jim was 18, a group of 5 of us from the local area joined or used to form a band to play rock music in the area. Mike McMahon from Montrose, Gary Bobian from Fruitvale, Jim LaCluse from Roslyn, myself living in Trail, and of course Jim from Fruitvale got together and started to play music. This was the beginning of a ordeal, very pleasant ordeal, that lasted for about 4 years, but I think affected all of us for our entire life. It was truly an adventure. Jim was a leading force in the group, as I think anyone who knew him would expect. He was always giving us the initiative to go further and tackle new challenges. We played kind of a circuit in the area through the years 63, 64, and early 65, where we played Riondell, Creston, Trail, Castledar, Nelson, occasionally in Roslyn, occasionally in Christina Lake, even less often, but occasionally over in the East Kootenays or in the Okanagan. During that period, we had an opportunity to play for the March of Dimes in Spokane, a television show that many of you probably remember. So Jim had his first TV experience playing at March of Dimes in 1964. In late 1964, we also had an opportunity to play on a national CTV dance program that was done in Calgary at the Peppermint Stick Lounge. And so it was an hour-long dance program, something like American Bandstand. And so Jim, again, had an opportunity to play on national along with the rest of us. And of course, it was Jim's voice that was the dynamic feature of the group. I remember that it was late in the year 1964 because we drove to Calgary in a blizzard, pulled our equipment out of the trailer that we were using in 40 below weather and had to thaw it out for hours before we could play it, and then drove back home through snowdrifts in the blizzard with Jim sitting beside me. I was driving, Jim sitting beside me in the seat saying, yeah, I think we can make it through this one. I think we can make it through this one as we plowed through the drifts. We did manage to get home. Jim was always concerned that the dancers, because we put them on many times ourselves, we sponsored the dances ourselves, we did the halls and hired the bouncers in those days, security officers, and these days, I guess. And he was always concerned if we had any kind of disruptions at the dance, because of course with teenagers, it's always chasing girls or fighting, right? And so it wasn't unheard of for Jim, being rather muscular in these days, to go down and break up fights so that it wouldn't create a big problem for us, while the rest of us were left playing on stage, trying to fill in with impromptu music while he dealt with the business and got back on stage to sing. In fact, Mike, who's here today, mentioned to me that he learned some of his best guitar licks while he was standing on stage trying to fill in and keep going while Jim was handling some of these duties. Our senior high school years were really spent going to school, which was sort of a have-to thing, practicing 3 or 4 nights a week. In fact, we spent a lot of our time practicing in the old Fruitvale Hall here that is no longer available. I arrived in the parking lot today and said, this isn't Fruitvale Hall. And then we would be playing on Friday and Saturday night, resting a little bit on Sunday because we often didn't get back until wee small hours on Saturday, and then back to school again. It was just sort of a circuit. We did that for 2.5 or 3 years. In 1964, we were fortunate to be asked to play in a couple of battles of bands. One was in Creston at the Blossom Festival, and we were runner-up in that one in '64, and then played in another battle of the bands in Nelson. We were fortunate enough to win that particular battle, and Jim, I believe, won the Best Vocalist Award in that particular event. In the spring of 1965, we played again in Creston and won the Battle of the Bands there. And shortly following that, we were engaged by a promoter out of Vancouver, and so the next chapter in our short-lived career in music started, and we went down to Vancouver and played in several venues. We had an engagement at the Marco Polo, which was at that time one of the 3 top nightclubs in Vancouver. We did a full show at the P&E Gardens, and then did another open-air show in English Bay at Kiss Showboat. That particular time, we were in the middle of I Don't Get No Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones, and a mob of about 3,000 kids stormed the stage, so they had to lock us in the back room until the crowd dispersed. We had a lot of fun during that trip. The promoter gave us a chauffeur-driven limousine that was at our disposal to take us wherever we wanted to go, and quite often we could get a police escort if we had to go somewhere across town. Jim was always in the forefront, of course, of organizing all of these things so that we could get from one venue to another. We had a grand homecoming while we were in Vancouver. We were engaged in Nelson to play for their summer pageant, and so they flew us back in a Grumman Goose into Nelson. The Grumman Goose is an amphibious aircraft, and they landed us on the lake right in front of the beach by the big bridge, and taxied up on the old ferry terminal to a big crowd. There was police escorts and the whole business. So for a bunch of local yokel boys coming home, it was really something for us. Then it was back to Vancouver and then off on a tour of BC and Alberta. And while we were passing through Penticton and playing at a little club called Shakey's Pizza, we were staying at a relatively new motor hotel on the strip in Penticton. We went down to the pool for a cool-off, and lo and behold, there was this beautiful blonde girl that was there, and that's where Jim met Donna. So we thought he was cooling off, but I'm not sure that's exactly We had to carry on our tour and played in several locations across the province and in Alberta. We had lengthy stays in Banff and Jasper, and down to Calgary. And unfortunately, when we were in Calgary, we ran into some financial difficulties and management difficulties, and the band broke up. So we came home, and Jim and I immediately left for Vancouver again to see if we could start up renew our singing career. We lasted about 4 months, I think, maybe 5 months there, and then ended up coming back to the Kootenays. So it was a fun-filled high for 3 to 4 years playing music. Gave Jim a major start, all of our first experience with professional music. And after that, as you all know, Jim carried on with his music in one form or another pretty much for his whole life. I had the opportunity, and I will be forever grateful for it, to play for a short period of time with him through 2015 in a group called North of 60. And while I filled in for Jim Stevens, and that just was amazing. It renewed our friendship, renewed our musical experience together, and that will stick with me forever.
Good morning. I'd like to thank Donna for giving me this opportunity to speak about my friend. Pastor, Donna, Megan, Devin, and all of Jim's family and friends. My name is Brian LaRose, and I am honored to be here. I'm very proud to say that Jim was my friend. Today I offer my sincerest and heartfelt condolences for the loss of your husband and son, brother, and friend. I met Jim in my early 20s, when he flew into my life like a superhero. Right from the start, I recognized that Jim was born a leader who earned all people's respect through honesty and hard work. Jim helped me grow both in my career and as a person. We worked hard together, and I always admired his work ethic and how loved he was by everyone. I will forever be thankful to my friend. For protecting me and helping me through these times. Jim was a very special man who easily could have been a celebrity in the big city. But he chose to come back to his hometown, knowing he wanted a family with Donna, and to focus his life on being a husband and a father. Jim loved his life with Donna. Over the years of our friendship, I admire his strength and how he lived his life, in his work, and most importantly, in his love for his wife Donna, daughter Megan, and son Devin. Jim's life touched all of us through his kindness and love for his family and all his friends. Jim lived by the 10 Commandments. He and I enjoyed our times reading the Bible together. He was very spiritual. He believed in Jesus Christ our Lord. I know that he is in heaven watching over us today. Thank you.
It's an honor to be up here today to talk about Jim. My name is Sean Okosh, and I've been the manager of Selkirk Paving for the past 8 years. I first met Jim on January 25th, 2006 at Boston Pizza in Castlegar. My brother Corey and I came up from Revelstoke to meet with Jim as there were changes taking place at SPL and Jim's expertise could be afforded to our newly purchased company in Revelstoke. We talked for a couple hours to get familiarized and see if it would work for both groups. When I look back at my journal a week ago to find the date of the meeting, I noticed that I jotted down 2 words. Seems good. What an understatement that was. Jim came to Revelstoke and worked with us for 2 years until he was asked to go back to SPL and run the Janelle operation. During that time, I realized what an incredible person Jim was. He had a wealth of knowledge. He was always positive. He never had a bad word to say about anyone, and he had the get-it-done attitude. I can imagine the hardship for Jim and his family while he was away, traveling back home every weekend to see them. Jim never complained about this. In 2009, I was asked to move to SPL and become the manager. This was a difficult decision for me, but was made easier by conversations with Jim. Jim provided a neutral perspective of things which helped me make the decision. Throughout the years working with Jim, I think we only had a couple of arguments. Jim would let me have it, expressing his thoughts, and then call back later to apologize. We were always able to work things out. One thing I will cherish was Jim's ability to look at the other side of things. Sometimes I would make decisions solely based on business facts, and Jim would come back to me with a different, more personal perspective that I had not thought about and which made sense, and he was able to change my decisions most times. When he needed to convince me of something, he would always start his sentence by, "As you know." And most often, I would say, "Jim, you are right. I never thought of that." Jim always stood up for the guys. When he felt someone needed a raise, he came to me with supporting information that I could not refuse. Jim was fair with his guys, and he always knew where you stood with him. If he had a problem with you, he would sit down and deal with the issue head on, instead of letting things slide. I admire that about Jim, and believe his employees did too. The grader. Jim loved to run the grader. Any chance he got, he would jump on the grader. We would get a call from the union saying that Jim is on the grader again. And we would tell him he was not allowed to run it as he was not part of the union. That didn't stop him. At the end of every paving season, all the equipment would get moved to the shop for winter maintenance. However, the grader would never seem to show up. When I asked Jim about it, he always had an excuse why he never moved it. He wanted to plow the snow at Janelle with the grader instead of the loader. Jim was an exceptional mentor for all of us at SPL. Jim's hard work and dedication was second to none. Jim will never be forgotten, and I will use his lessons of life throughout my journey. His reputation as a leader in the paving industry will live on forever, and the pride he displayed at his second home at the Janelle plant will be maintained forever. Love you, Jimmy.
It's a great honor for me to speak on behalf of the Tremblay family today. I am a 5th generation, we're now at 7. A little family history. Cy and Mary Tremblay built their home near Vitor, Saskatchewan. Blanche was one of the children born to them. We were told Tom Tremblay, last name but no relation, rode on by his pony one day when Blanche was a young teenager, and alas, they were wed. Blanche had her first child, Ed, at 16. Harry and Helen followed. They were all born on the farm. They had a large extended family. Blanche, Tom, and the children also resided for a short while in Edmonton and Vancouver. Ed moved to Trail to work at Cominco when he was 19. His family followed and purchased land in Rossburg. They first lived in a small log cabin, but it burned down, and they built their forever home. Uncle Harry and Ed had great love of motorcycles, fishing, hunting, which was passed along through the generations. Ed married Lib, and Rosemary, Carol, and Pam were born. Helen married Jim, Pat, Karen, and Jim were born. Harry married Anne, Coralie, and Judy were born. Jimmy was the only boy for 8 years. Then everyone had a second round of children, adding 4 more boys, Tom and Marty, Patty and Denny, as well as 2 more girls, Cheryl and Annette. Jimmy was the most excellent role model for the young ones. On most Sundays, Ed's family would drive to Rossburg to visit his parents and Harry and family. The children played in the creek, fished, and played with the animals and churned butter. The adults would be visiting. They would also visit Helen and Jim on the way home. Carol vividly remembers trying to catch squirrels and fishing with Jimmy. In the evening, Jimmy and his neighbors would entertain everyone singing and playing with the guitar. In their later years, Cy and little grandpa lived with Nanny and Grandpa. Auntie Helen would always call and tell us where Jimmy and the band were playing. Jim, Donna, Megan, and Devin spent many Christmases home to support parties entertaining the seniors who loved them. I started going to the gym in 1982, and Jim was always there. He had a massive upper body, and he'd always say that we were blessed with the Trombley chicken legs because we could never get them to grow. Jim and I, the past year, he taught me to be positive, to eat well, and to read many inspirational books. We had many visits and long, soulful phone calls. Everyone in the family loved Jimmy and considered him a very kind and compassionate man. We will all remember his guitar playing and his singing at the family functions, especially at the last reunion in 2015. 7 generations are a very large family and still growing. You will forever be remembered in our hearts and souls. We know that you've been met by your family at the gates of heaven. Your dad, Nanny, Grandpa, Papa, little Grandpa, Uncle Ed, Auntie Liv, Uncle Harry, Auntie Anne, Lee, Bud, Dwayne, Lisa, and many more. Our Lord and all the angels are so delighted to have you join with your amazing voice in their song and dance. We will all remember you with love. Goodbye, my cousin. God bless you. We will miss you until we meet again.
Wow, what a great day for a great man. Donna, Megan, Kevin, thank you so much for allowing us to be here. Share a few words. We're gonna swing a little bit here and talk about the most deadly side of Jimmy. And, first off, my good friend Graham Livingston here, my right, and my good friend Randy McLaughlin. I'm Larry Kuchar, for those who aren't aware. We're going to say a few words on behalf of the guys at the gym who spent many countless hours and fun times working on the gym. As we all know, a big part of Jim's life was fitness and bodybuilding. Some of the most memorable times over the years we spent together training with Jim. He certainly kept us entertained and laughing. When we hear the name Jim Halpin, we think of words like genuine, real, caring, supportive, fun, family man, hard worker, hardest worker I know, a class act, and very much a cool cat. We could go on forever, but for us, the most important gift that Jim gave us was his friendship. Now, when we say class act, how about that Cadillac that was 4 blocks long? I think it went from gold to yellow and then green, I believe, in the end. Jim was always so proud of that car, always bragging that he didn't need to put winter tires on it because it wouldn't go anywhere in the snow, and it did. Always the best dressed man who had great hair. Man, that guy could step out of his work truck at the job site, 100 degrees out, all the staff are dirty and sweaty, and Jim's hair was perfect. Between Jim checking out his hair and Graham and Randy flexing their biceps, there wasn't enough room, there was enough mirrors in the gym to go around. Jim had very few flaws, if any, that we could pick on him with. That being said, he did have one. He had no calves. He wore out every calf machine in the gym trying to get them to grow. I guess I shouldn't say no calves. He had calves, but they were a little less developed compared to that incredible upper body that he had built over the years. It all began in the basement of Graham's house at the Glenmary Townhouses some 40 years ago. Jim lived about a block or so away. Something brought us together one evening, and we started to build some homemade equipment and train in Graham's basement. From there, we moved to a dungeon under the gym bleachers of the Kamiko Arena where we took our equipment. Jim had many connections, and before too long, we found ourselves moving again just down the hall in the arena to our own little gym that grew very quickly. Jim was really the pioneer with bringing a real weight room and bodybuilding to trail. Jim even talked Eddie Tambolini into giving him a key to the arena. We could now go to the gym whenever we wanted to. We all worked out together over the years with Jim pushing some guys to compete. He was always pushing us to be the best we could be. Graham went on to compete and win many major competitions across Canada representing trail. I know Jim was very proud of his accomplishments. As fashion changes, Jim was front and center. Remember the day when MC Hammer pants or pajama pants were the thing? All the guys in the gym were wearing them. Jim liked them so much he started selling them. There was pink everywhere. Jim had the ability to zing you. You didn't even realize it. He kept us laughing at all times. Graham will certainly miss his nickname that has stuck with him to this day. We knew right away when Jim walked into the room for our workout as his first words were, "Hey, how dog?" Randy remembers and shares a story of meeting Jim for the first time. There is etiquette in the gym as far as the use of equipment goes. So respectfully, Randy approached Jim and asked him if he was using the bench press. Jim said yes. Randy said, "Okay, I'll go over and do some pull downs." Jim said, "I'm using that as well." Randy again said, "Okay, I'll just go over and do some leg press." And of course, Jim said, "I'm using that as well." Randy thought, who the heck is this guy? He's running around using 6 machines all at once, and he's smiling and laughing the entire time. It's kind of like he has seniority over everything. And he did. Away from the daily workouts, Graham and myself actually worked for Jim at one time. 2 very different jobs. One being Jim's passion, which we all know is paid. The other being the nightclub at the Terra Nova, owned by our good friend Brian Rose. I think Graham, you worked for the paving crew for a few years. I think I lasted a few shifts. As far as the nightclub goes, Jim being the classy guy, Brian persuaded Jim to manage the newly renovated dance club. Beautiful, classy place where Jim quickly invoked the dress code. Trail didn't know what to do. It was very cool. It's kind of like that movie Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze. You had long hair then, either. Jim Halpin, we miss everything about you. Miss your smile, your laugh. Rest in peace, buddy. We love you.
Ladies and gentlemen, another friend, Norm Berry, is not able to be here today, but he has sent a tribute that I've been asked to read. It's addressed, or an epitaph, to James Joseph Jimmy Help. He wrote, "I came to know Jim and Donna via a bag of cheesies." Yes, cheesies. Isn't that right, Donna? Cheesies. One would get at Jim and Donna's Glenmary Market. As we became friends, I would stop in to their counter and have a coffee and burger, and we began to discuss the state of local community affairs. We were all business people in the Trail area at the time, so had lots in common. We decided the best way to improve the city was to try to run for city council, and so it all began. On Jim's first aldermanic campaign, a friend came up with a fantastic slogan, "A helping hand for Trail." Vote Jim Help for Trail Council. Well, little did I know how far that slogan was going to go. Turned out the community knew Jim so well and respected him so much. His support at the polls on election night turned in the highest ever recorded number of votes for an aldermanic candidate. That was amazing, and we all celebrated. We ran 6 elections as either candidates of or as members of each other's campaign teams. My memory serves me right, and we never lost one. That was the power of the helping hand. Everyone knew Jim and liked him. Now it was my pleasure to work with Jim on Trail City Council. Of course, he was great with projects, but I especially admired his ability to listen to any dissenters of a situation. He would go to any length to be patient and see all sides of the matter at hand. He was calm and put others at ease. Yet, there would invariably come the time when Jim would move forward without delay, in keeping with one of the slogans he had on the grill sign on the front of one of his paving pickups. And those were the words, "Just do it." I admired his generous contribution to the community in providing his guitar and voice, entertainment to community television fundraisers, as well as acting as a great MC. I admired his sharing of Christmas music. He would sing to the seniors at various retirement centers and care centers in the area. Everyone enjoyed Jim's generous gift of music. Many remember him from his days in the famous rock and roll band, the Chevelles. I have many snapshots of Donna and Jim and my 30 years of friendship. Some of those are Jim working with his paving crew on extremely hot summer days, and I mean work. Jim at the Glenmary Market serving the community in his friendly, charismatic way. Jim performing on stage at the rock and roll reunion in the late 90s with his band, the Chevelles, to a packed crowd. Seeing June Carter and Johnny Cash in concert with them. Getting to know their wonderful family in a winter trip to the famous city of Edmonton. It was cold. Sharing their faith with any of those who wished it. Watching Megan and Devin come along into their lives. In my humble vision, Jim Helpman exemplified the man of steel and velvet. The man characterized in the professional development book written by Aubrey Andelin, as Jim was a provider, a guide to many, a great helper to many. He was a bodybuilder and tough. He cared for children. He was a protector. He was gentle, self-confident, attentive. He showed humility. Jim had a special mental and spiritual grace, or in my words, he was a man of soul. Thank you all for honoring Jim today. Jim, I'm proud to say I'm your friend, and always will be your friend. And that's signed off by Norm C. Berry in Kelowna. Peter, would you like to come sing for us?
I feel very honored to do a gospel tune. Thank you, Donna, Megan, Devin.
Life journey, and perhaps never meet anymore till we gather in heaven's bright city, far away on the beautiful shore. If we never meet again this side of heaven, as we struggle through this world and its strife, there's another meeting place somewhere in heaven, by the side of life, where the charming rose bloom forever, and where separations come no more. If we never meet again this side of heaven, I will meet you on that wonderful shore.
We're going to miss Jim. Love you, Jim. We're going to miss you terribly. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. You know, on occasion, you will hear people say, particularly when somebody they've known well has come to the end of life after a long period of illness. You'll sometimes hear people say he lost his battle with cancer. If you've been tempted to say that about Jim, then I most energetically beg to differ. I don't think for a minute that Jim died a loser. True, he lived with cancer, and that may well be listed as the official cause of death. But Jim understood better than many, perhaps better than most, that what really counts is not the number of days, but what you do with the days you've got. For Jim, it wasn't about adding days to life. It was about adding life to the days that he had. And he did it amazingly well. For Jim, that meant becoming a participant in his final journey. He journaled his thoughts. He researched the topic. He adjusted his diet. He worked out because he wanted to be fit no matter what else was going on. It was all part of giving quality to the time that he had. Jim's faith was a big part of his life. From the time in his 20s when he heard the good news of Jesus Christ, the time when he experienced forgiveness for his sins and began a new life as a child of God, Jim took seriously his responsibility to live his faith. His word was his honor. According to those who knew him best, Jim was constantly praying. He liked the biblical book of the Psalms. And when I asked his family to tell me about Jim's faith journey, his daughter's response was immediate, and without any hesitation, she said his favorite Bible verse was John 3:16. I asked why, and I believe that the answer that was given was this: because it says it all. God's love, God's forgiveness, the hope for eternity in his presence. Perhaps that sums up Jim's life about as well as anything could. Jim knew that he was loved. Loved by family, and most especially by God. And because of that love, he could love others. And he chose to live his life in faithfulness to the God who loved him supremely, in faithfulness to the family that cared. Jim sang of that love. He sang of that love that is expressed in the amazing grace of God that reaches out to people, all people. Let's listen to Jim as he sang Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Was grace that taught my heart to feel, and grace my fears relieved. How great will be forever mine. Will be forever mine. You are forever mine.
Shall we pray? Eternal God, the words of confidence expressed in the song bring hope to our thoughts and minds today. As we rejoice that Jim knew you, looked forward to meeting you. And we thank you that we have so many memories that we can share together. And Father, once again, I just ask that you would give strength and guidance to family and friends as we move on from this day. That we may live in a way that would honor Jim in following his example. May it be, Lord. Amen. Let's travel with Jim through the years as we give our attention to the screen.
that I know was growing strong. Wasn't the spring, and the spring became the summer. Would have believed you'd come along. And they're touching hands, they're reaching out, they're touching me, touching you. Sweet Caroline, the times never seem so good. I've been crying what I have to believe I never would, but now I look at the nights and don't seem so lonely. We fill it up when they're told. And when I hurt, this burden runs off my shoulders. How can I hurt when I'm holding you? They're touching more, they're reaching out, they're touching me, touching you. Oh, sweet Caroline, good times never seem so good. I've been inclined to believe they never would. Sweet Caroline, good times never seem so good. I can't to believe they never would. Oh, sweet Caroline, good times never seem so good. I to believe they never would. Sweet Caroline, dirty talk, I heard, cry myself to sleep. Show me how this time can shut a breeze. Well, another last about night came to that long, found out that I don't taste so sweet. Now it's guitars and Cadillacs, hillbilly music, rolling on the streets that I call home. Yes, my guitars and Cadillacs, hillbilly music, the only things that keep me hanging on. All right. Well, I ain't no blame, I'm in this tinsel land. I lost them last in life. These scars are always left for me. I wanna thank you, girl, for teaching me brand new ways to be true. Like finding mine now, I guess I'll have to leave. Well, now it's guitars and Cadillacs, or hillbilly music, lonely, lonely streets that I call home. Yes, my guitars and Cadillacs,
And now we come to that moment when we must say goodbye. We commit Jim's earthly remains into the care of his family. We commend his soul to the eternal God who loved the world so much that he gave his one and only Son, that all who believe in him need not perish, but have eternal life. On behalf of the Helping family, I want to thank each one of you for being here. You're all invited to a reception in Jim's honor that will be served in a few minutes. If you're able, maybe you could just help with stacking up some of the chairs and moving the tables out onto the floor. In a moment, the family will just retire from this room for a few minutes. The immediate family, the ones in the front row here, just for a few moments to regroup, and they'll be rejoining us. In the meantime, we'll prepare this room. Donna, Megan, Devin, it's been an honor to be with you today. Thank you. And now, for all of you, may the peace of God flood your inner being as you go forward in the presence of the God of peace. Amen.